we come to the Ward 5 Challenger candidate, Steve Christo. So Steve, welcome, and let's have your opening statement. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here. Pleased to be here. I'm passionate about representing the community as an independent voice for Ward 5 as City Councilor. I'm committed to bringing the Ward 5 residents into Quincy's decision-making process. I'm a lifelong Quincy resident, a North Quincy High grad. Quincy Public Schools, brought my children up in the Quincy Public Schools, and now my grandchildren are in the Quincy Public Schools. So I'm very proud of that. The former Thomas Crane Public Library president of the foundation, and former treasurer of Discover Quincy. And I also did teach some accounting in Quincy College.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll dive right into the questions. So question 1 is about transparency. Many candidates stress the importance of improved communication and how they will have greater transparency. Please give one specific example of something new that will improve communication and transparency.
Okay, my view of it is I plan to have a meeting with every neighborhood every quarter. And I will send out newsletters, and I will have weekly office hours, and I'll be accessible to all the constituents in Ward 5. I've got the time, I've got the capacity, and I've got the desire to make a difference and really be, there for the constituents and the residents of the ward, and every neighborhood within the ward as well.
All right, thank you, sir. Our next question has to do with zoning. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
Okay, well, one of the things that I've struggled with really my whole adult life, when I've had children in Quincy is, my daughters are currently priced out of the Quincy market for home ownership. And, I don't know why we just can't Airbnb, ban Airbnb. So the process is in place so we can make things affordable for our family and our children so they can live in the community they grew up in. It's very difficult when that competition is in place. And so I think we could do a better job of, changing the law and thinking of things differently, and see if we can, let the people that make Quincy have an opportunity to home ownership in Quincy. That's one of the things I would do. One of the other things I do hear out in the field as it relates to Airbnb is, well, the laws are there. Massachusetts wrote their laws, which we have to follow. Quincy has their ordinance in place. But like so many things, they're not being enforced, or there's no mechanism in place. That's what I'm hearing from the residents. So as long as we have to continue with the Airbnb, I think we need to do a little bit more on enforcing the existing laws, or figure out how to enforce them. So I think that's something that I would drive for as well as a ward councilor.
Thank you. Our third question, as everyone knows at this point, concerns critical race theory. In your own words, can you define critical race theory in relation to civic planning or the social structures of our city? And the follow-up, do you think that Quincy can benefit from this type of thinking? Why or why not?
Okay, well, I'll take the first part of that question. I don't believe there really is a definition for critical race theory. I think the conversation about critical race theory is one that's driven by political rhetoric. The question I want to answer is, what can I do for the Asian American community in my ward beyond rallies? I am committed to, naming a government for everyone in the city, especially those who have been left out, in the Chinese and Vietnamese community. I think we can just do a much better job of living and trying to do the right thing as a community in every part of our community. Ward 5 is all over the city of Quincy. So every issue that Quincy has, Ward 5 has. We've talked about these issues in the past, but we have to start living and doing the right thing for everybody in the community, particularly in every area and every neighborhood of Ward 5.
Thank you. Our next question concerns the budget. As a city councilor, you would have to make some tough budgetary decisions. How do you define your priorities on next year's budget? And the follow-up, how do you intend to balance the needs of the taxpayers against the plans for city growth?
All right, well, a city budget in my mind is a representation of our values as a city. all my decisions around the budget will be determined by the people of Ward 5. And I've stated this all the time since I've been running, since I announced my campaign, as well as the last campaign. I'm committed, to making sure that I'm the representative of the people and our values, particularly in Ward 5. And I know we could do a better job in taking the voices of the people into the city government and help with the budget process.
All right, very good, thank you. Our fifth question has to do with unions. Our community supports our city workers, all workers in their right to bargain collectively. How would you support labor in its right to collective bargain for wages and benefits going forward?
Well, as it goes, I'm a big supporter of unions. Both my parents, my mother, my father, were in various unions. My mother was in the IBEW, my father was in the Carpenters Union. So I've always supported unions and collective bargaining. And I think as a city, I would promote that. And I think, we just have to look at it as a prevailing wage, and we have to look at it as something that's fair and equitable to everybody. I've always sort of worked my life in a balance that if everybody feels as if they're being treated fairly, and then in reality being treated fairly, then I think everybody comes to a better conclusion and a better end in negotiations.
All right, thank you. Our sixth question concerns controversy. Most years, at least a few controversial issues come before the council. How will you balance listening to the concerns of all your constituents, yet still having to make a decision that may and should not please everyone?
Well, that's a very good question. That's one of the questions that I've been, talking about in all the residents I've been speaking to around the city. What I've pledged really to do at the end of the day is be the voice of the people for every one of their neighborhoods in Quincy. And I want to make sure I hear from them before I make a decision. And as I'm making my decision, I'll ultimately know I'll be the final arbiter on a yay or a nay. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take all that information and I'm going to let them know where I'm going with this and help them and see if they, can persuade me or think of a way that we can come to a better answer for all those involved. And that's the way I think I've operated my personal life and my professional life as well. I've had to make tough decisions, I've sadly had to, let people go. I've had to cut budgets here and there and the like. So I have the capacity to do it, but I have the compassion to do it in the right way.
All right, thank you, sir. We've made quick work of these questions. We're already at the final.
I know. I feel like I'm the only one that's gotten this far, but I haven't listened to everybody either. So
our last question is a basic one, and but still an important one. What inspired you to run and serve? Wow.
Well, this goes back to my last run that was unsuccessful. I lost by a couple of hundred votes, a little bit over, and I was in a position where I had the time, and I've always wanted to give back to the community, as I mentioned before. And so, the political environment back then was different. And I said, oh my gosh, I really need to do something here. And then I decided to, go ahead. I talked to my family, and I went ahead, and I want to make a difference. And so that, coupled with the poor representation that Ward 5 has had historically since I've been, in the ward and owning a home, I said, I know I can do a better job than what's in place now. And, I feel like I hear that all the time in Ward 5. So that's my approach. And I think that was mainly the reason that I got back in. And it was, I guess, fortunate or fortuitous that the former Ward 5 councilor before Mr. Phelan, never ever returned any one of my calls or did anything that was remotely responsive to me or my family. So I said, well, if she's moving on, I want to try to move in. And that's sort of what promoted me to do that. And I love the city. I've always loved the city. I've had the opportunity to, relocate all around the country and frankly, all around the world if I chose to. I decided that I would never do that, and I always wanted to make Quincy my home.
Thank you. You might have to rehash a little bit, given some of what you just said.
What,
Now would be the time for your closing statement. So thank you again.
okay, well, that will be a lot of it, but my closing statement will be really pretty concise, like my opening statement was. You know, I'm running for city council to bring our voices to City Hall. Ward 5, in my view, has been neglected for a number of years, and I want to be the person that helps that along. I'm committed to government transparency. I always have been. I'm a CPA and an auditor by training, and I think I can add value from transparency perspective, but I want to bring the people along with me along as well as in the decision-making process. The other thing that I'm interested in, very interested in, the revitalization of Wollaston Center. That project is advancing, and I'm really the only candidate of choice. I'm not conflicted, and I think I will take care of the people of Ward 5 that are interested in the Wollaston Center development, but I also have the capacity, the desire, and the eagerness to take care of the entire ward. And lastly, you know, I'm invested in public education in Quincy. Like I said, myself, our 3 daughters, my 2 grandchildren are currently enrolled in Quincy Public Schools. And honestly, I think part of my success was from the school system in Quincy. And I want to promote, you know, the best I can on the council for funding for both academics and enrichment programming. So that's my story. And a vote for Christo is a vote for change.
Thank you, Mr. Christo.